Our first speaker today and this morning is Ted Peters, who's a Lutheran theologian and professor of systematic theology at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary. He is author of God, the World's Future, and Science, Theology, and Ethics. He serves as editor of Theology and Science by the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences in Berkeley. Welcome, Ted Peters.
Well, good morning. I have to congratulate Micah Redding and the larger Redding family for all the behind-the-scenes planning. One of the things about human creativity is it takes leadership. Oh, leadership is a blessing. Okay, next slide. Oh, I'm in charge. I forgot. The promise and peril of technological hope. If there's going to be a Christian transhumanism, one of the most important qualities or characteristics or trait is going to be our relationship to technology, and technology is not static, it's always changing. We have to commit ourselves to change and have a vision that that change is going to lead to something good or better. Little boys love machines. And I have a hunch that Christian transhumanists are going to like electronic machines quite a bit. As Micah said, I come from Berkeley, California. We have a research center there called the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences, and we like mostly to deal with abstract things, Big Bang, origin of the universe, and speciation and evolution and stuff like that. Don't do anything that's practical. So transhumanism is as close as we get. My colleague Braden Moloch over here, he and I work together and we produce this journal, Theology and Science, and for about 2 years now, we've been trying to get this issue of transhumanism and issues of faith and religious commitment in conversation. So we've had a number of good articles over the last couple of years, and with a couple of other Berkeley colleagues, we're working on a book that'll come out about a year from now called Religious Transhumanism and Its Critics. There really haven't been very many religious transhumanists up until this point. Lincoln Cannon, who many of you know, has a great website. He's a really sharp Mormon theologian, fully committed to Mormon transhumanism. John Hughes, Unitarian transhumanism, we've got Buddhist transhumanism, etc. And we need to ponder, I think, if we're going to have a Christian transhumanism, transhumanism is the noun, Christian is the adjective. What would it be like to have transhumanist Christianity, reversing it? I'm not sure how we should go about thinking about that, but hopefully by the time of the second annual Christian Transhumanist meeting, maybe our book will be out. Technology takes us from the past through the present to the future. I think there are two different ways of understanding the future. I'm going to borrow Jürgen Moltmann's distinction, futurum. You can't see it too clearly here. Futurum is an understanding of the future as an extension of the past and the present. So an acorn has built in the future of an oak tree. It's already all there in potential in the acorn. Adventus, which is also a word that you'll find in Scripture and theology, that's the future that comes at us. It's not something that we create. It's not something we extrapolate. That's God's act. Isaiah tells us, using God speaking, behold, I create new things. God creates new things. And when God creates, that's things without a precedent. That's the future as Adventists. And technological progress has got to be futurum. But technological progress isn't the only horse in the race. We've also got God's future in the race. Ordinarily, we think of God's future as Adventists in terms of the apocalypse, the second coming of Christ, the war between the children of light and the children of darkness, and beyond that then is resurrection of the dead and God's everlasting kingdom. There's no amount of technology that's going to contribute to that. Or is there? My favorite vision appears in the prophet Isaiah, and that's the peaceable kingdom. And here it's the lion lying down with the lamb, and the little child goes among the wild beasts without any fear. When I think about God's creation, let me say, this is what I think about. The world that you and I live in, the natural world that you and I live in, is not yet God's creation in its completed form. That's what it's going to look like when God is finally done. Only when God transforms the world will it finally be the world in which God can say, as in Genesis 1:1 to 2:4a, behold, it's very good. I'm a Lutheran. Martin Luther was once asked, do you believe Isaiah's vision of the peaceable kingdom where the lion will lie down with the lamb? And Luther says, well, if it's in the Bible, I believe it, but, I think you have to put in a new lamb each day. That future is not futurum. That's going to have to be Adventist. In the book of Revelation, I like to start at the end of the Bible and work backwards. We have the vision of the New Jerusalem, in which God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. That's God's future as Adventists. Can we get there through technological futurum? All right, just briefly, transhumanism was around before the Christians got interested. Transhumanists tell me that there's a variety of views within this school of thought. Not everybody agrees 100%. But what are some of the characteristics? As I've already mentioned, it's an understanding implicitly that the future is a form of futurum, growth, progress. The favorite word, if you're a transhumanist, is evolution. We are the products of a long evolutionary process, and that is going to continue into the future. Another characteristic of a transhumanist is the convergence of biological change, usually genetic change, for the purposes of enhancing what the human being is capable of, and the possibility of mixing that with nanotechnology. And so evolution will no longer be only what nature does. Evolution will now be the product of what we rational human beings, through biological and technological transformation, do to our descendants in the future. I think the highest value, and Aubrey de Grey can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the highest value for the transhumanists that we know is intelligence. Transhumanists will say, All of evolution has had its one goal, intelligence. And so what we want for the next generations is superintelligence, highest value. Christians are going to have a little problem with that, right? Our highest value usually is love and compassion. But intelligence is what's important, and if with deep brain implants, intelligence amplification, or artificial intelligence, AI, the next generation is going to be more intelligent than we are. Overcoming death, there are two ways of doing this. Radical life extension, which we'll hear from Aubrey de Grey later on today, and cybernetic immortality, that's the Ray Kurzweil theory where we remove the information pattern that is our mind from the biological substrate, the meat between our ears, and we put it into a computer, and then we upload it into the computer cloud, and you then have the experience of disembodied intelligence. And as long as you keep the computer recharged, you can live, indefinitely. Aubrey de Grey, who's, I'll come back to Aubrey in a couple minutes. The singularity, particularly Ray Kurzweil, there will be in this evolutionary development from intelligence to superintelligence a moment in which what you and I in this generation create will take over. After all, our descendants will be smarter than we are. So we ought to give them the reins to the buckboard, right? And then when that takes over, we are going to begin the leap from the human to the post-human. We will become obsolete, and our descendants will become a post-human species. The trans and transhumanism means we're a step on the way to something beyond. Okay, back to Aubrey. Aubrey will say, among other things, you know what, Aubrey will say whatever he wants to say, but Aubrey's agenda for some years now has been what we're going to call radical life extension. We're going to treat aging and death as a disease, and we know in the past that medical science works on curing disease. Could we, through advances in medical science, make it so that we could live for 1,000 years or indefinitely? Now, I want to ponder that. Methuselah didn't make it for 1,000 years, but he came close. Last night in the elevator, I had a brief conversation with Micah's mother, Rita. Now, Rita has 18 children. I don't know how many are here today, but yeah, look to your left, look to your right. One of them could be another one of Rita's children. And it was said that the youngest of the children are getting to that graduation point where they'll be leaving. And I thought I heard in Rita's voice this sense that when the nest gets empty, she's going to feel lonely. So I said, well, Rita, I've got some grandchildren I could sell you kind of cheap. Oh, no, she says, I've got grandchildren of my own. Okay, now, suppose Aubrey de Grey gets his way and Rita lives to be 1,000 years old. Let's imagine in her on her 800th birthday, and now her grandchildren and great-grandchildren all send her an e-card to wish her a happy birthday. And her heart goes palpitating, and she sits down to give attention to the jingle, the happy birthday jingle in every one of these e-cards. How long is that going to take her? How many pizza deliveries will she have to have? Life will be different when we start living on those time scales. So on the one hand, how can anyone not say thank you, Dr. Aubrey de Grey, for helping us achieve health and well-being for a longer period of time? And at the same time, things that we have taken for granted are going to look different. Transhumanism can be a total philosophy. Here's an example. I'm just going to quickly, at the metaphysical cosmological level, look what we've got here. There's that word evolution again. That reality, physical reality, is characterized by evolution, but now there's a little concept sort of snuck in there. It's the doctrine of progress. Evolution is progressive. It leads to increased intelligence. Now, the word here is complexification toward ever more complex structures, forms, and operations. So we've got a commitment. What's the nature of reality? It is evolution, and it is evolutionary, and it's progressive. Psychological, we human beings are imbued with the innate will to evolve. I want to ponder a minute. The words evolution and will do not go together. Willing is something that you and I do as individuals, right? We can will to come to Micah Redding's conference. Evolution has to do with species. It has to do with baby making. While you and I are sitting here this morning, the cells in our body are mutating, right? Oh, there goes another one. Some of those mutations will get into our germ cells. We'll pass them on to our children, who will also do some mutating. We'll pass them on to their children. And over time, the human race will look different. Evolution has got nothing to do with willing. So we're pumping in this idea that you and I have been destined to will, and now we're going to will. Anyway, I just want to say that's what a transhumanist might say. It's unscientific and incoherent, but that's what could be said. Ethical level, we should seek to foster our innate will to evolve, which there is no such thing, continually striving to expand our abilities throughout my life and acting in harmony with this cosmology. Well, certainly it's good, healthy spirituality to try to attune ourselves with the destiny of the cosmos. That's true. Now, I come from, what was the number on that? 10, thank you. I come from a technological family. My father was an automotive engineer in Detroit for General Motors. Every morning he would get up and he would go to General Motors and he would try to invent something that hitherto had never appeared in the history of the planet. He thought he was earning a living. But just ask yourself the question, what's the nature of reality if creativity and newness are so intrinsic? He had 22 patents before he retired. I was kind of proud of him of that. And my mother used to sit and touch the furniture and say, I like new things. I want to say, again, that the God of the Bible, Isaiah, the book of Revelation, that God does new things. And so, on the one hand, I want to say there's something about technology that is attuned to God who's promising transformation. God's not done creating this world yet. So that's the plus about technology. Will technology do everything to transform us in the way that God wants it? That's the question that I address with the word peril. Now, Christians have a certain doctrine that nobody likes to talk about, but it's very important. It's called sin. That is to say, we've learned after centuries about human nature. Human nature has this possibility, it's not an inevitability, but the possibility of ruining good things. And so here's Time magazine. What makes us good or evil? Not us, but we're made that way, right? Okay, sin comes in the form of poor judgment, graffiti. I always think of graffiti. I mean, in retrospect, I come from Berkeley. We like to say, oh, graffiti's a form of art. But, you know, it's basically taking something really nice and beautiful and soiling it. The computer virus. The computer virus is created solely for the purpose of destruction. So if you look carefully at Ray Kurzweil, what are you going to do in the future? And Kurzweil's answer is, well, the anti-computer virus techies are smarter than the computer virus techies, and they'll always be one step ahead. But notice you have to incorporate into your vision, factor in the possibility that there are going to be some human beings who are going to do destructive things. Totalitarianism, we've never seen that in the history of the human race, have we? Or genocide, 1948, we thought genocide would be over with the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. I don't know how many genocides we've had since then, but they don't go away. So I just want to say that technology could be pressed into the service of something negative. We don't have an automatic, built-in principle of transformation that leads us towards greater virtue. This is one of my professors at the University of Chicago when I was studying there, Langdon Gilkey. Gilkey is in the tradition of Reinhold Niebuhr and Paul Tillich, and they want to make this question because they want to make this point about history. History here is the word to describe the human enterprise over the long haul. That technology, despite the fact that it could do absolutely wonderful things, can also make bombs and make war far more efficient. So morals do not advance in history. Technology advances, there's progress in technology, there's not progress in morality. Hence, a progress of technology may in fact augur a regress in social harmony and social justice. Instead of saving mankind, can threaten to become the demonic instrument of mankind's destruction. So you can think of atomic bombs, perhaps as examples. This permanent ambiguity, and that's the word that Langdon Gilkey likes, ambiguity, that your and my relationship to technology needs to take the ambiguity into account. It can do great things, advance medicine, or it can do destructive things, bigger bombs. Okay, now we're at the cusp of a Christian transhumanist affirmation. Let me just say, I think this is great. I think that this is great. So I've got one more point. We believe that the intentional use of technology coupled with following Christ will empower us to become more human. What does it mean to be human? Okay? On the one hand, some transhumanists want to replace humanity with something that's post-human. But if we want to be more human, where do we get our definition of humanity? As I said before, we're always changing. We're not static. the human beings 20,000 years from now are going to be kind of different from us. So what is our definition? In the New Testament, the icon tu theou, the image of God in the human race, is defined by what? By Jesus Christ, not Adam and Eve. And so if we're going after intelligence, which is a wonderful thing, right? But maybe there are other values that are more important. Here's an Orthodox theologian saying the archetype of the human being is Christ. Christ, as the highest realization of man, naturally constitutes the goal of mankind's upward journey, the beginning but also the end of history. So I think we might want to ask this question. The technology that transhumanists want to rely on, do they contribute to this or not? Finally, byproducts. There are almost always some unintended consequences. So if Aubrey de Grey succeeds in getting us to live indefinitely, that would be a wonderful triumph. But suppose along the way, other good things happen, then we've got some ethical categories. Therapy, that is to say, we need medical advance to help make us healthy. Enhancement means that we could, through genetic biotech, genetic alteration or editing, some individuals could become greater, superior, above what normal is. And then finally, transhumanism, the full-blown cosmological vision of a post-human species. I want to say, if we were to fall short of immortality or utopia, we could still have some byproducts that would contribute to human flowering through therapy and enhancement. I'm about to do a new thing. Finally, one more thing. How many minutes do I have? One. All right. I'll stop. And then we got time for at least one question, right? Okay. That's the end. Any comments? We got 50 seconds. Go ahead.
So with the Christian Transhumanism view, the line that stuck out to me was about how technology and following Jesus allows us to become more human. I thought transhumanism was about becoming greater.
I think most transhumanists self-define as looking ahead that where you and my descendants will be greater than human. They'll be more intelligent. They'll have longer lifespans. There are all these qualities that will be greater than human. I think the Christian needs to ask, what should be our goals? And it seems to me our goals should be interpreted from what our vision of Jesus Christ is. And as we try to press technology into the service of something, that's the way technology should be asked to serve. I want to say, I think that's what is truly human, biblically speaking. That's what's truly human. So there might be a difference between being truly human and being post-human. Maybe. Anyway, thank you for your attention.